stand on what it thinks of the U.S. negotiations with Tehran over its nuclear program. So there are multiple people who spoke to CNN for this story, and another person that's familiar with this intelligence that's been gathered by U.S. officials on this issue says that the chance of an Israeli strike on an Iranian nuclear facility has gone up significantly in recent months. And the prospect of a Trump-negotiated U.S.-Iran deal that doesn't remove all of Iran's uranium makes the chance of a strike more likely. So let's just talk about that briefly, because it's important to understand how these negotiations are going. Now, the United States and Iran concluded their fourth round of negotiations over the weekend. They're going to continue talking. So this pursuit of diplomacy, which we should give Trump some positive reinforcement for, continues, and that's a good thing. But right now, the real sticking point is the fact that the United States doesn't want Iran to enrich any uranium at all, which is a problem because Iran, especially under the original nuclear deal, was able to enrich some uranium for their energy needs. Now think about how things operate in Iran. Yes, it is an oil-producing country, but oil is really the heart of their economy. They export their oil in order to keep their economy going, and they want to enrich uranium, have like the minimal amount necessary to generate enough energy for their country. So it's not enough enriched uranium to build a nuclear weapon, but it is enough for them to, provide energy to the people of Iran. And so that's the sticking point. The Trump administration is like, no uranium at all, no enriched uranium at all. And Iran's like, bro, we need energy. So that's what they're negotiating right now. Now, according to CNN, the heightened concerns about a strike come not only from the public and private messaging from senior Israeli officials, but also from intercepted Israeli communications and observations of Israeli military movements that could suggest that there will be an imminent strike. For example, Israel has reportedly moved some of their air munitions and has completed some military exercises, an air exercise to be specific. Thus far, Trump has stuck to the policy of diplomacy. And guys, regardless of what you think about Trump, he should be given kudos for that, because the positive reinforcement might work, right? If he does something that we want, that we think is a good thing, cheering him on might encourage him to keep going in that direction. But we'll see, because Trump is easily swayed. He's very impressionable. He can turn on anyone at any given moment. So far, he has resisted a war with Iran, but let's not forget, he is the one who ripped up the Iran nuclear deal in his first term. Trump is also the guy who decided to assassinate Qasem Soleimani, who was the top general in Iran's military. And that could have led to, a full-fledged war, a hot war between the United States and Iran at the time. Luckily, it didn't, but Trump was definitely playing with fire in his first term. Going to war with Iran would be disastrous, and thousands of American soldiers would die if it gets to a point where we have boots on the ground. We must avoid war with Iran, especially considering the fact that we'd be getting dragged into a war with Iran by a foreign government. That would be insane. But let me give you some more details here. Now, Trump has also publicly threatened military action against Iran if his administration's efforts to broker a new nuclear deal fail. So I'm really concerned about that. Now, negotiations are ongoing. They have stalled recently because of that conflict in regard to enriched uranium. Iran's leader has called the United States demand for Iran to not enrich uranium, a big mistake. Now, Trump's reluctance thus far to greenlight an attack against Iran may be the only thing causing Israel to hesitate. Netanyahu wants to shut down any possible nuclear deal between the United States and Iran, but we shouldn't be surprised by that. I mean, he was railing against the original deal from the very beginning, but he also doesn't want to alienate Donald Trump. He sees the American government as his puppet. He sees Trump as his dog that he takes for a walk now and then. The question is Trump going to keep allowing Netanyahu to dog walk him, or is he going to be a strong leader that avoids wasting American lives and American resources on a war that we shouldn't be fighting? That's the real question here. Jonathan Panikoff, who's a former senior intelligence official specializing in the region, says the following. At the end of the day, the Israeli decision-making is going to be predicated on U.S. policy determinations and actions and what agreements President Trump does or does not come to with Iran. And according to CNN, Panikoff added that he did not believe that Netanyahu would be willing to risk entirely fracturing the U.S. relationship he has by launching a strike without at least tacit approval. I think he's giving Netanyahu way too much credit. I don't think that's the case. I think Netanyahu is willing to do whatever it takes to get what he wants. I don't think he cares about any relationships. So I would not rely on Netanyahu wanting to remain buddies with Trump as the only way to prevent this war from happening. I think Trump needs to show that he is a strong leader who is not going to back Israel up if they try to drag us into a hot war with Iran. Now, one anonymous source argued that I think it's more likely they strike to try to get the deal to fall apart if they think Trump is going to settle for a bad deal. By the way, Netanyahu thinks any diplomatic deal is a bad deal. But this anonymous source, who I wish would come out publicly with his name or her name, is right. I mean, I'm more inclined to believe this prediction or this analysis as it pertains to Benjamin Netanyahu and what is likely to happen. The Israelis have not been shy about signaling that to us, both publicly and privately. Totally correct about that. It has consistently been the Israeli position that the military option is the only option to stopping Iran's military nuclear program, one U.S. official noted. And look, if Netanyahu does move ahead with a strike, it looks like the U.S. may fall in line anyway, and that's what I'm worried about. And you think Netanyahu doesn't know that? You think Bibi doesn't know that? You think the Israeli government doesn't know that the U.S. government will effectively be pressured into following along, into providing the resources, the bombs, essentially whatever Israel needs to continue fighting Iran? It's just, and look, according to one official, the US has stepped up intelligence gathering to be ready to aid Israel if its leaders decide to strike. So, in other words, Israel might force Trump's hand. I mean, I don't necessarily think it needs to play out that way. If they decide to launch strikes in Iran, I think it's totally fine and, in fact, the sign of a good leader to say, oh, you're trying to drag us into a war with Iran when I said I wanted to pursue diplomatic means. All right, go fend for yourselves. That's what a strong leader would do. Now, would Trump actually do that? It depends who signed his last check. But let me continue. Another source close to the Trump administration says the U.S. is unlikely to help. So you have sources saying two different things, okay? So another source says, no, the U.S. is unlikely to help Israel carry out strikes on Iranian nuclear sites at this moment, short of some major provocation by Tehran. So there are some Democrats, by the way, I want to focus on them just for a second because they're more concerned about the fact that this information leaked to the press. They're less concerned about the United States getting dragged into a war with Iran. And that individual is Democratic lawmaker Jared Moskowitz. Let's take a look.
There was just a leak that is now national news that Israel is poised to strike Iran. Where did that leak come from in the administration? Do we know what department leaked that? Is that being looked into?
Well, I'm not aware of the leak that you're discussing. I'm obviously, I wouldn't discuss intelligence matters and even verify whether it's even true. I also don't think it's a mystery, though. Irrespective, I'm not talking about the leak. I'm talking about the news story that Israel has made clear that they retain the option of action to limit Iran from ever gaining a nuclear capability.
Listen, that's fair. Israel's free to do what it pleases. Israel's a foreign government. I'm not interested in influencing Israel. I'm not interested in our government dictating what the Israeli people do. I see Israel and the United States as two separate countries. That we did a preemptive war in Iraq in 2003 in response to 9/11? No. Saddam Hussein and Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11. Was it for oil? No, actually, maybe that was a little bit of a factor, but no, that wasn't the main reason. It really wasn't. Why did we go to war with Iraq? Let me take you back 22 years ago when all these pieces were being published right before we went to war with Iraq. Now, if you're paying close attention, these stories weren't widespread, but if you were paying close attention, if you were addicted to politics, you saw the pressure coming from Israel to invade Iraq. And it's just incredible to go back and read these pieces. Now, I'm going to go to this piece that was written in February 27th, 2003. So weeks before we invaded Iraq with a preemptive strike. It's titled, Threats and Responses, the Middle East. Israel says war on Iraq would benefit the region. They really wanted that regime change in Iraq. That's interesting. With the Oslo Agreement